Okay, so this is the SolarEdge side of things. We're just going to continue here. Basically, I went to PVSketch and created a second version of that same project using a SolarEdge inverter instead. This is just the 3kW HD inverter here. So there's the image of the house. Here are our modules. There's 12 modules, I believe. Just going to block out that image so you can see the modules and roof more clearly. And so you can see that we have the inverter selected already from PVSketch, and I've gone and I'm going to be setting my string length to 6 because we have 12 modules. And we're going to insert our inverter, same as the microinverter, but in this case, just the one. And since it's 12 modules and I have string lengths of 6, once I do that same manual stringing using the fence command, I should come out with 2 strings. I'm going to do the same thing and insert my AC panel here. And then I'm going to do the same process and start to connect my AC to my inverter to my string. So select AC for inverter panel, inverter, and there's our first conductor. And then I'm going to select source conductors and select both strings to the same inverter. So there everything is wired together. We can see all the wires for each string and the conductor. We're going to save the project and go right back into our PVCAD ribbon up top. And we're going to select the large button that says single line diagram. And that is going to automatically generate this single line diagram here, which again is a standard single line diagram. If we zoom in, we can see our utility with the meter, AC panel, our inverter, and then our 2 strings of 6. Now this doesn't show right now the optimizer, so we're going to go into our visibility states and select the one for 1 optimizer per module. And so now it recognizes it as a series of modules connected with optimizers, and it's also rendered there with a small optimizer connected to your module. Again, an enhanced attribute editor, you can change some of those properties directly in the block if you want. And you can do the same thing in the inverter. So for instance, if you want to call out more specifically that this is a SolarEdge 3K HD inverter, you can do that. So right here, I'm just changing that circuit ID of 1 to the inverter name. And so now we have a SolarEdge optimizer specific single line generated directly from our PVCAD layout. And that is kind of from start to finish what it would look like on the SolarEdge side. I am just going to go back to the Enphase side of things. So here we have the same rooftop, slightly different layout. And I'm just going to go back through this. We're going to insert 1 microinverter per string. And this is really important to note because this is the logic in PVCAD. So it would really be a drag if you had to insert 1 optimizer for every single module. Can get kind of tedious. So how it works is that we work in branches. So every branch needs its own optimizer to recognize that it is a connected series of microinverters. So obviously the system says it's a microinverter, 1 module per inverter, but we know that these are branches. So I overrode it and did 7 modules per branch, which is the string size in this case, because we have 14 modules. And I'm going to go ahead and string my modules together using that fence command. Going to make a pretty funky line here, and everything's going to follow that line I'm drawing. And there we have 2 strings of 7. And then I'm just going to start and insert my AC panel so I can begin to connect everything. So our cursor kind of prompts you on what the next steps are. So it says select AC panel or inverter. I've selected both of them. And it draws my first conductor. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other microinverter as well. And then I'm going to connect each string to its respective microinverter. So this obviously takes just a little bit longer than the SolarEdge because each string has its own microinverter, but it still simplifies the whole process a lot from having to define every module for every inverter. So there's string number 2, just picking a wire alignment point and then connecting it to that last microinverter. So once it's all strung together, we're going to go back into that PVCAD ribbon, save our project, just like we did for SolarEdge. And we're going to click that single line diagram button, and it's going to generate a similar generic single line that we're then going to go back and customize for Enphase. So here's our single line. Again, all of these blocks have visibility states, so there's lots of variations of those same blocks built directly into PVCAD. Currently, if we look at this, like I said, this is a generic single line, so we see separate inverters here, as well as the modules are identified as strings. So I'm going to go into the visibility state for my microinverter and select the one that says Enphase. And so now it recognizes it as a branch of 7 rather than a string. And we can see here, there's the microinverter connected to the module. And we're going to do the same thing for our other branch as well. Same thing, enhanced attribute editor. This exists for every single block in our system. And the great thing about these blocks that we created, and so previously, as a lot of you know, it was really difficult to work with optimizers or microinverters within PVCAD. So what we did here, these blocks, we custom built them specifically for SolarEdge and Enphase, which are the 2 most common optimizers and microinverters. I'm just deleting these here because we don't need them. So we're just going to kind of consolidate our single line and move the branches with the microinverters to connect to the rest of the single line. But anyway, previously you would have had to build this own block from scratch in a block editor. You would have had to put it in a tool palette, and it was really difficult for PVCAD to identify that you were working with a microinverter or optimizer. But now, since we've built those blocks directly in, they're already there in the visibility state. So all you have to do is pick the visibility state you want, and it matches up perfectly. So here we have a full single line using microinverters. And that's the start to finish for both SolarEdge and Enphase. I think we did have a few questions. Let me just go back and check on those. So one question we had was about the calculations within the single line. So this is some limitations we are still working on. Typically in PVCAD, once you create an Excel sheet, it generates a report that has all of the calculations and numbers for that single line. That report is going to remain the same as that generic single line that was first generated. Any edits you make to specify it or customize it won't be reflected in that report. And so that is something to note. That being said, you still get numbers for generic single line. So they do give you a format to input correct numbers into, and it does give you a functional starting block. But you will have to also customize that as well in this kind of semi-automatic approach to creating a full microinverter optimizer single line. And if anyone has more questions about where those reports are or what they look like, I'm happy to review that another time. Just feel free to reach out to me via email or phone.
Maybe just close. We'll post this on the internet.
Okay, I think that was the only question we had. If you guys have any questions as you're trying this new feature out with microinverters and optimizers, feel free to reach out to us at support. If you have any really specific projects that have a more nuanced need, we're also happy to review those with you. So happy designing with microinverters and optimizers, and hopefully we'll see you back here soon.